never shuts down. Your inner voice is always talking to you. And I wanted to give some sort of sense of the landscape and your own interior voice.
Jim Woodson fell in love with the high desert of northern New Mexico when his wife Barbara, a psychotherapist, attended a conference in Abiquiu. Between sessions, they would explore the back roads of this rugged country on a motorcycle.
But I think we stayed or built a place here partly for the same reasons that George O'Keeffe did. The sense that this is a very spiritual place.
They built their home and his studio facing the southern facade of Ghost Ranch.
I think there's a kind of an organic quality to the whole thing, that sense of bonding with the earth. And I think that's something that's very difficult to get to when you're living in the city. It's not just by coincidence. I think that prophets have gone to the desert for their inspiration.
Born in Waco, Texas in 1941, to a broom maker with an 8th grade education and a school secretary, Jim Woodson drew constantly as a child, but wasn't introduced to the world of art until he entered college, the first in his family to do so. After completing a BFA in art from Texas Christian University and an MFA in painting from the University of Texas at Austin, he moved to San Francisco in 1967 during the Summer of Love, finding inspiration in its laid-back lifestyle. There, he began his career as an art teacher at UC Davis, but more importantly, he found his love of landscape painting in the Palomino Hills of Northern California. When his alma mater offered him a teaching position and to support his art and his young family, Woodson returned to TCU. Back home in North Texas, Woodson was able to create a life few artists enjoy, raising a family, paying his bills, inspiring generations of young painters, all while pursuing his own career as an artist.
When I moved back to Texas and I started looking down at the earth, and I started looking at places where roads were being constructed, and I was very interested in that sort of cultural, natural imposition. After a while, I started building my own structures and putting them in a landscape and making paintings from that. That led me to this idea of being a landscape painter, but having something else going on. And at the time, that was more of a kind of a cultural intrusion on the landscape. And that's gradually morphed into more of a psychological, more of a perhaps spiritual imposition on the landscape. But there's always been the aspect of two things going on at one time. In the process of making a painting, the landscape suggested to me a sense of duration, and that something that was unchanging, that was in that way forever, at least in terms of in our terms. I wanted to give some sense of something in response to that. So the marks would become more about a kind of an activity. When I was teaching and students were struggling with color, I actually had them limit their palette. I would suggest to them that they could limit their palette down to about 6 colors. They had to create all of their color. In other words, not having lots and lots of colors to choose from, they would have to mix those colors. After a while I thought, if I'm asking them to do this, why don't I do this as well? One of the reasons that using a limited palette like that, it means that you have to mix everything that you're going to use. You almost never use anything straight out of the tube. It opened up a whole range of chroma for me that I hadn't experienced quite in the same way before. But somehow they were more integrated into the landscape. To try to get them to resolve themselves back into the landscape was quite a challenge. And I don't think it's possible for that to actually happen. But I think what it does is creates a sense of something in process, something becoming. And then I think it also raises the possibility of something going on there that in the eye of the viewer. I like the idea that it's the viewer that finishes the painting. A few years ago, I got a call from my Dallas gallery, and they said, "We don't know if you'd be interested in doing this, but George Bush would like for you to critique his paintings. I thought, how can I not do this? So we met and he asked me if I would become his teacher. He told me that what he really would like to learn from me was how to use color. I talked him into doing work in series, and it was like, okay, I get it. And he is very, very experimental. As a matter of fact, if I'm watching him mix color, I think, I don't see how you're going to get there from here, but he always does, and he comes up with some color combinations that, you know, I'm always surprised about, because he goes about it in a different way than I would have gone about it. So he's learned something from me, but he's sort of gone past me in terms of how brave he is with putting on really, really fat paint. And he came to being a painter by reading a short book that Winston Churchill wrote about painting. But President Bush has gone well past Winston Churchill as an artist. If you don't take chances when you're making a painting, then you only paint what you already know. I tend to draw on a kind of a hard paper, a very, very smooth paper, and I tend to draw with pencils, and mostly number 2 pencils, you know, which is the kind you had when you were back in school. I do have some pencils that are darker, and I usually bring those in later in the process when I want to bring some emphasis to some part of the drawing. I do a lot of drawings, and the drawings are not preparations for paintings in any way, except that there's a kind of a carryover effect. Drawings happen relatively quickly. I've done a number of drawings where I draw with 3 pencils at one time. By drawing like that, I sometimes create shapes that are very surprising to me that can be developed more fully by erasing and supplementing certain parts of it. At times when I need to sit down and relax a little bit from painting, I do drawings. When you're in a place as quiet as the desert, your body has its own physical response to it. And there's a quietness there where they can get in touch with something that's very difficult to get to, you know, in a city. If you don't try to meet painting on its own terms, you just frankly don't get it. You know, you have to slow down in a world that is really very busy right now, always things coming at you. On the desert, you have to sit still. If you want to see what the painting has to offer, you also have to sit still and just pay attention to what the painting is trying to give you. I wanted to create something of a difference between thinking and thought. Thought is something that's past, that's done, and it seems to me that when you have ideas, a lot of times you put down those ideas. That comes from the area of thought in my mind, and I wanted to get some sense of what thinking was, that thinking was an activity. And I wanted to accomplish that by not having a thought and putting it down, but having my thinking happening at the end of the brush.
17 years after his divorce, Jim and Barbara married in Florence, Italy, when he received an award to commemorate the Biennial of Contemporary Art. In 2005, they began construction on their home and studio in Abiquiu, and in 2019, completed construction of a connected art gallery.
When we chose this site for the new gallery, we wanted to invoke a sense of the landscape by placing it in a particular direction. The entrance to the gallery, into the long triangular hallway, and then when you make a left-hand turn into the gallery, you see to the east the mountains. That window frames up the landscape in such a way that you feel like you're seeing it for the first time.
I think you do need to come here and experience Jim's work. I mean, one thing is in a gallery, another thing is to actually come where you can see the landscape, where you can see where he was and feel the energy. So when you see that on the painting, the tempo, the energy, the figures, I mean, it all makes sense. Oh, we've had 2 shamans come to visit us. The one I remember the most was she would look at Jim's paintings and say that she thought he was the shaman because he's the one that could see the energy, the images, you know, in the landscapes.
If it were up to me, I would never make a small painting again. I'd only make big paintings. To make a big painting allows me as an artist to use my hand like this, my hand like this, my arm like this, my whole body moving in front of the canvas, kind of a choreography of different ways of making marks and lines. Plus the fact that when you get closer to the painting, it's a different painting than when you're from a distance. And I want my paintings to be experienced in both ways, where you see the landscape and you get up close and you lose the landscape. But it's also one that makes you feel like you're in the middle of a painting as well. I went to the Museum of Modern Art, and going through the galleries, I came upon Claude Monet's water lily paintings. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was actually in a painting instead of looking at a painting on the wall. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to be able to create something like that. In creating the gallery, one has the sense of being immersed in the landscape and then seeing that experience repeated in the painting. And I think that's a very different experience than seeing a painting in a gallery and removed from a place. Somehow it's a complete experience by having to see the paintings in the context in which they were created.